What's up, guys? It is the day, well, not really yet. It is the day before the Stanley Cup playoffs begin, and I am so excited um, to fill out this bracket and watch some hockey. And so basically, me and all my friends, every year we create our own bracket and put a little money in, and we've been doing that for 2 years now. This will be the third, and I've lost both years. So I made my bracket. I put a lot of thought into each series, especially the first round, um, and I'm hoping it's my year. I watched a lot of hockey this year. I'm definitely no expert, but um, we're gonna have some upsets in the first round here. Not a ton, but um, we'll see. And I'm gonna do something a little different. I'm gonna start down here actually, because that's where I have it on my phone. And we're going to start with the Rangers versus the Capitals. Rangers win the President's Trophy, and the Capitals barely sneak in with like 90 points. And honestly, I wish it was any other team but the Capitals, because I think the Capitals are boring. They're literally a statistical anomaly. Um, I thought this year all they were supposed to care about was getting Ovechkin goals to break Gretzky's record, and I guess they kind of did that because they get 4 more games of playoff hockey for him to get another goal or two. The season series, both the teams went 2-2, so actually pretty even when these teams match up head to head. And I know season series in the regular season really doesn't matter at all come playoff time, but I still like to look at that because as a Kraken fan, it seemed to matter last year in the playoffs. Did pretty good against the Avs last year and bad against the Stars in the regular season, and that's exactly how the playoffs turned out. But I'm really high on the Rangers coming into the postseason. I mean, last year they got just first round exited. They couldn't really score goals unless your name was Chris Kreider. Panarin was an absolute goose egg, so was Zibanejad. But Shesterkin has looked really good in the second half of this year, ever since the All-Star break. He had some shaky numbers in the first half of the year, but they still found a way to have the best record in the NHL. And the Capitals, on the other hand, they have like a minus 36 goal differential. They can't score goals. They play more defensive style hockey. I actually really like Charlie Lindgren. I think if the Rangers are going to win the series, it's going to be him carrying them on their back. And even if they just steal a game, Charlie Lindgren can probably do that. But I honestly don't see that happening. I see the Rangers coming out strong at home, going up 2-0, and just like they did last year, they went up 2-0. They, maybe let their foot off the gas a little bit. I don't think they do that this year. I think they come in locked in. I have the Rangers sweeping the Capitals in round 1, 4-0. Moving on to probably the most boring series in the first round, it's the Hurricanes and the Islanders. I don't like watching the Islanders. They're probably one of the teams I watched the least amount this entire year. They were just so mid and out of a playoff spot when they fired their head coach, and then they brought in the new coach, and everyone was expecting them to have this, new coach buff that teams seem to have when they get a new coach. Saw it with the Oilers, the Wild had one this year, a couple other teams, but that didn't really happen. They kind of just kept losing. And I know eventually they went on a big win streak, like 7-game win streak in March or something, to kind of solidify their playoff spot. But I still just don't really trust this team. It seems like Sorokin had a really off year. I honestly thought he was overrated last year too, and he was the favorite coming into this year to win the Vezina. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know about Sorokin. And honestly, what's his name, Semyon Varlamov? It seems like he's been getting the touches a little bit more in the last month. Seems like the coach was going to Varlamov a lot more at the end of the year to get in the playoff spot. So, I mean, obviously it's going to be Sorokin in the playoffs. And he could, again, if it's kind of the same thing with the Capitals. If the Islanders have a chance, it's going to be on Sorokin's back. Matt Barzal's pretty cool, I guess. But, I mean, look at the other team on the other side. The Hurricanes are just a powerhouse. They pick up Evgeny Kuznetsov and Jake Gensel, and Gensel just looks so good. He fits like a glove on this team. He's scoring lots of goals, and I just think the Hurricanes are going to run away with it. I'm starting off my bracket predictions with 2 hot 4-0s. I mean, again, Sorokin can steal a game, but I just think the Hurricanes are too good. I think they're going to run through them. All right, moving on to where things get a little bit more exciting up here in the East. We have the Florida Panthers taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Battle of Florida. And these two teams are rivals. It seems like whenever these two teams play each other, they want to kill each other. There's a lot of fighting, a lot of hits, and I think the series will be no different. The Panthers last year went to the Cup final, obviously, by barely squeaking into the playoffs. Just 92 points, I think it was. And then they were an 8 seed and upset the greatest regular season team in NHL history, the Boston Bruins. And a lot of people think that they overachieved going to the Cup final, and they were kind of, a fluke, and a lot of them even had the Florida Panthers missing the playoffs. Honestly, guilty. I was maybe one of them. I thought either them or the Bruins would miss the playoffs. I was dead wrong. They both seem to be two of the best teams in the league. But the truth was, and Florida proved it to us this year, is that they just underachieved in the regular season last year. Bobrovsky was going through injuries, I remember, and they just couldn't really find their identity. But they're back. I mean, they could have won the President's Trophy. They end up winning the Atlantic, mostly thanks to Boston choking, or maybe purposely losing that last game to the Senators so that they could draw the Toronto Maple Leafs. But we'll talk about that in a second. But Florida's just a powerhouse. They get Vladimir Tarasenko. Bobrovsky looks good, and honestly, Stolarz is statistically better, but I mean, we're going to see Bobrovsky. And then you look at Tampa Bay Lightning. Sergachev's out for the season. Vasilevsky, battling injury, had surgery and was out for the first few months. And they treaded water. But ever since then, it seems like Tampa, they solidified their spot pretty quickly. They went on a run, and that's even with Vasilevsky coming back and not really having Vasilevsky numbers in the regular season. So Tampa Bay is kind of an interesting team, but when you look at this playoff matchup, Vasilevsky coming off injury and having shaky numbers, but maybe figuring it out towards the end, I could see Vasilevsky having a superstar playoff run. There's a lot of the players say it. He's probably the best goaltender in the league when he's hot, and if he gets hot in a rivalry match where both teams are going to be physical, Kucherov had a standout year. Tampa Bay's power play is the best in the league. I think this series is going to be a lot closer than everyone thinks. I feel like everyone is saying that it's going to be a close match, but no one really has the balls to actually pick Tampa. I haven't seen anyone pick Tampa yet. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to be the first one. Hopefully the first one y'all see. I'm taking Tampa Bay to upset the Florida Panthers in the first round 4-3 in 7 games. And this is coming from someone who, last year in the first round, picked Toronto to beat Tampa Bay in the first round. I predicted that. I think I said in 6 games, but they did it in 5. I wasn't high on Tampa last year. I thought they were tired from the 2 cup runs. This year, I think it's a little different. They had a little extra rest in the offseason. They still have that core that can just make insane playoff runs. And I'm basically just gambling on Vasilevsky to be Stanley Cup Vasilevsky. And if he's that, and Tampa Bay is that, then they can beat anyone. I also, towards or around the All-Star break, kind of made a prediction, and I wanted to put money on it too, but I didn't, that the Panthers would win the East and Stars would win the West, and I was going to predict that exact matchup, but I never really got around to it. And so, trust me, when the Panthers were hot and they were the team in the NHL, yeah, I was there with them. So, I'm not even really betting against Florida right now. I'm kind of just taking a gamble on Tampa. And I feel like in these brackets in hockey, in the NHL, anything can happen in these playoffs. You have to have a few upsets in the first round, second round, whatever. And this is one of mine. So, yeah, Tampa Bay in 7 over Florida. And to round out round 1 in the East, we have the matchup of round 1, in my opinion. Probably the one I'm going to watch the closest. It's Bruins and Leafs. We all know these teams. You know it's going 7 games. There's no other way to predict it. And I think game 1 is Saturday night. God, that's going to be so fun to watch. It's in Boston. Boston has the home ice. And Boston's also kicked Toronto's ass this year. They're 4-0 against him. I think the stat is Toronto hasn't beaten Boston in a playoff series since like 1967. But here's the thing. I mean, you throw all that garbage out the window because this is a new 7-game series. It's playoff time. But the way Boston plays Toronto is they're so much more physical, and they keep Toronto's star players to the outside and makes it difficult to score. And when I was watching Austin Matthews try and score that 70th goal, he's got 12 shots on goal, you know. But were they good shots? He definitely had some chances, but it was kind of interesting watching. It's like, yeah, these Leafs, this core four, especially Matthews, he can score a bunch of goals, but when it really matters, you know, I guess that's a bit of a stretch to say, but this Leafs team, I just feel like isn't all that different from what we've seen the last 3 years. I think my dad mentioned to me, he's like, he thinks this is the Leafs' year. This is their year to finally, you know, get out and make a run and maybe go win a cup. And I don't really see why. I don't see how this team is any different from last year or the year before. They still have the same core, the same goaltending pretty much, the same defense. The only moves they made in the offseason were what? Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi. And that's forward depth, but their defense is still just super shaky. They allow a bunch of goals, and whether that's the defense's fault or the goaltending's fault, because Jesus, I do not trust this goaltending. Ilya Samsonov's your starter in a 7-game series against the Bruins. I don't trust that at all. And Joseph Woll, he might get the start in game 2 depending on how things go in game 1. So the Leafs can make magic happen. They can be scrappy. They can score goals. But I mean, we'll see about the goaltending. On the other side, though, Boston, I don't have really much faith in them either. I think this is the battle of the two chokers. Leafs choke every year, obviously, we all know that. And Boston choked big time last year against the Panthers. And honestly, they choked in the regular season this year too. I think they were 3rd in overtime losses total in the league. They had like 15 OT losses. And I know there's no 3-on-3 OT or shootouts in the playoffs, but it's still just no ice in the veins for Boston. And so, it's not who's going to win this series, it's who's going to choke this series. That's how everyone's going to view it, I feel like. And Boston's got home ice, and this playoff bracket was really hard. There were a lot of series that had me scratching my head and just almost flipped a coin because teams were so even. And basically what I decided to come down to for some of these matchups, and then you'll see a trend here with my picks, is who's better on home ice and who has home ice, who has the better goaltending that can steal a game. If it's going 7 games, what's going to be that one game that Tendy steals? And those are kind of two of the and season series matchup, like who won the regular season series matchup. That's probably third, so that probably matters least. Those are kind of the 3 criteria, and what it comes down to for this matchup, yeah, Boston's got home ice. They have the better goaltender. I don't care who it is, Olmark or Swayman. They're literally the same person. I don't care. They're both better than whoever Toronto puts in net. And Boston owns Toronto. So from the moment I saw this matchup happening, I didn't. There's no way I was picking Toronto. It's gonna go 7. I'll give Toronto 3 games, but I have Boston beating Toronto in 7 and moving on to play the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I'll put in the scorecards here, the 7-7-4-4, and there's your first round in the East. So 3 quote-unquote favorites and 1, I'd say pretty big upset. Everyone's saying, they wouldn't be surprised or it wouldn't be an upset if Tampa won, but no one's picking them. So I am. There it is. Here's your round 1 East. Let's move on to the West here. And let's start up top. Let's start at the bottom, because I bet no one else does that. We're going to start with Edmonton and LA. This banger of a matchup. I don't care if Edmonton smokes them or not. It's just so fun to watch these teams battle it out every year. It's going to be the 3rd year in a row that these teams are playing each other. 2 years ago, Edmonton 1-6. 2 years ago, Edmonton 1-7. Last year, Edmonton 1-6. And the changes for the Kings, they get rid of some depth scoring up front and bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois, pay him a bunch of money for a bunch of years, and he's a bust. I mean, he hasn't really done much. He has had a better second half of the year, but LA, they play that 1-3-1 trap defense, but they don't have goaltending. I don't trust Cam Talbot or David Riddick. They're both backups, and Talbot's so old, and I think their best shot was with Korpisalo last year. I think he was good, or even I know Jonathan Quick. They said bye to him, but I'd even pick him in a playoff run over any of those other tendies that they've been rocking with. I mean, Quick brought him to 7 2 years ago. And the Oilers just own these guys. Oilers in the season series 3-1 this year. Yep, Oilers won 3 and the Kings won 1. The Kings won 1 at home in LA. And Oilers look good. With the new coach, they went on that 17-game heater. It's because, forwards finally back checking, being more responsible. And I think when it comes to playoffs and shit gets serious, that's just going to be even more amplified for guys like Connor McDavid, who was in the running for the Selke Trophy, I think. Maybe not, I don't know. But either way, this will be a super fun series to watch. I'll probably watch all these games too. I might even cheer for the Kings just because I don't like when all the announcers just kind of slob on McDavid and all them. It's kind of fun to root for the underdog, but regardless, there's no way the Oilers lose this series. I have the Oilers winning this one in 5. Just kind of going with the trend of 2 years ago it was 7, last year it was 6. This year it's going to be 5. I have the Oilers taking out the Kings in round 1. Let's go to the Canucks and the Preds. Canucks back in the playoffs. First in the Pacific. No one saw this coming. I definitely didn't have them in the playoffs in my season predictions. I also didn't have the Preds. So this will be a super fun series. A lot of travel between these two cities. I know one of my friends he's a Canucks fan. He was worried about the travel for the for the Canucks all the way to Nashville. But when you look at the season series between these two, Canucks owned them. Vancouver won all 3 games. Nashville, after canceling the concert or whatever, they went 16-0-2 on that massive heater to get into the playoffs, and they get the first wild card spot in the West, and they draw the Vancouver Canucks. And I mean, I hate saying this for almost every team. I feel like everyone says this. Oh, the X factor's the goaltender, but I think it really is for the Canucks. Demko battling injury towards the end of the year. It never feels good if you're a Canucks fan. You don't really know what Demko you're gonna get. You could get third in Vezina voting Demko, or an injured, banked up Demko like we saw the other night. I mean, they got not rolled, but they lost to Winnipeg. But I think the game before that they played the Flames, and Demko stopped 39 out of 40. That was his first game back from injury. So I think you can bet on Demko in this series. I think he's gonna play well. I know Nashville's just pretty solid, good depth, good defensive structured team, and Roman Josi just creates a lot of offense by himself. But I don't know if they have enough to really rattle Demko all that much. And the Canucks depth is also pretty good. They have, the Lotto line. I don't know which lines they're actually going to be rolling out, and I heard they might have some injuries. A friend told me they're hiding injuries, so I don't know anything about that. But I like the additions that the Canucks got in the offseason and at the deadline with Zadorov and Carson Soucy. I don't know if Soucy's healthy or not either. But regardless, it seems like whenever Nashville makes the playoffs the past few years, I know 2 years ago it was like this, they make this miraculous run and all the fans are hyping the playoffs, out first round. And I think it's going to be a similar story here. I think Nashville's good enough, they're a solid enough team to take 2 games off of Vancouver. But at the end of the day, I have the Canucks winning this one in 6 games, 4-2, which will set up a good old Canadian matchup here between the Canucks and Oilers. But before we get to that, let's go to the Jets and the Avs. And honestly, I say it about every series, this is going to be a good one. I can't wait to watch this one. Winnipeg has rolled Colorado this year. They won all 3 games in the regular season. And they came out and worked for that second seed, for that home ice advantage. Colorado kind of choked it. And these were 2 other teams that I kind of looked at during the All-Star break. And when they were in the positions that they were in, it might have been similar, to be honest, kind of 2 and 3. Because I thought about these 2 meeting up in the playoffs, and both their offenses are so good. but also mainly the Avs. But also these two teams on home ice this year were pretty outstanding. I mean, I think Colorado was the best home team in the league, and Winnipeg played good at home too. The advantage that the Jets have between the pipes over the Avs is outstanding. I think this is the biggest gap in goaltending out of all the first round that we'll see, maybe even the whole playoffs. I do not like Alexander Georgiev. I've said it all year. My friends pick him up in fantasy. I say, what are you doing? He drops a -10. Okay? This guy is not fit to win a Stanley Cup. I know, that Habs are just so good. They won a cup with Kemper a couple years ago. So, I mean, they can do it. But I'd still take Kemper over Georgiev. And I think part of the reason the Avs went out in the first round last year was because they lost the goaltender battle. Surprisingly enough to got in Philip Grubauer. But, I mean, in terms of as a Kraken, definitely an anomaly. That's the best stretch of hockey Grubauer's ever played in Seattle. But Georgiev, I mean, wasn't that good against a Kraken team that can't really score. And I don't see him being great here. Hillebuck, on the other hand, is going to win the Vezina. He's the best goaltender in the NHL. I love the additions that Winnipeg made. They got some depth from LA in that blockbuster trade that they easily won. And they also go out and pick up Tyler Toffoli at the deadline. This team is solid. Josh Morrissey's played great this year. And in the books, Avs are favored. I think Avs are like -130. They're favored to win the series when they don't have home ice. They don't have the goaltender advantage. And they got swept this year in the regular season. This one's kind of a no-brainer to me. And I might even put money on this, either +1.5 or just to win the series as a whole. I just don't really get it. I know McKinnon was probably the best hockey player this year. He's my MVP for sure. And Makar's healthy, and even Gabriel Landeskog might come back. I saw something about that. I don't know if that's right away. But either way, I just the home ice advantage and Hillebuck playing the way he's playing and Georgiev playing the way he's playing. I like the Jets to win this one in 7 on home ice. That's kind of what I said All-Star break. This series, if they played each other, would probably go 7. I'd probably give the edge to whoever has home ice because the Avs are so good at home. But if it's Game 7 in Winnipeg, I like the Jets to take this series against the Avalanche. And those 22 Cup champs are out first round 2 years back to back. So it's another Canadian team in the West. 3 of them. But it won't be 4 because our last round 1 matchup is just another absolute banger between Dallas and Vegas, a rematch of last year's Western Conference Finals. And I'm so happy that Vegas lost last night to the Anaheim Ducks. Was that last night? Yeah. Because that made this series so much more of a banger and this series so much more of a banger. Could have been different, but I'm glad it's the way it is. And this series is also just so tough. This is one I took a long time, put a lot of thought into it, because you just don't really know what Golden Knights team you're going to get. The LTIR Merchants. I mean, they go and pick up 3 studs at the deadline because they had Mark Stone and someone else on long-term injured reserved. So they had the cap space to pick up, I think, Anthony Mantha, Tomas Hertl, and Noah Hannafin. So this team, it's kind of a bunch of misfits, but that's kind of the Vegas motto, and that's who they went to the Cup with in their first year, was all the misfits. I just don't know how this team's going to play. Mark Stone's going to come back. I think he's healthy for Game 1. Just a pretty much stacked team, but from all places. Some from injured, some from Calgary, just a bunch of players coming together. And let's talk about the goaltending for Vegas, too, because Adin Hill's been battling injury all year. And it seems like whenever he's come back, he's struggled. Adin Hill's been shaky. I think he had a really good first half of the year, but then he got injured. And it seems like he hasn't been the same since. But if you look at the matchup between Vegas and Dallas, Vegas pretty much pummeled them in the playoffs last year. And then they come out in the regular season this year and win all 3 matchups. Dallas is favored in this series. Everyone I've seen is taking Dallas. But if Vegas wins the series, I don't think anyone should be surprised. I don't think anyone wants Vegas to win the series, except for people that live in Vegas. But it should be a really good and close series. And we look at Dallas; they've kind of been a dark horse, kind of swept under the rug all year. I feel like Ottinger, he's kind of had a down year in terms of statistics. I think he's sitting at like a 906 save percentage on the year, which isn't good. He's also battled injuries. Wedgwood has got a lot of the games in for the Stars, but they go and pick up Chris Tanev at the deadline. The Stars, and I love that acquisition. I think I really like Chris Tanev. I think it just helps the blue line there in Dallas. Heiskanen had a great year. Robertson not as good as last year, but I mean he can still produce in the playoffs. Pavelski, Ben, Wyatt Johnston's had a great year. This Stars team is just solid, up and down, crazy depth. And if you get, I hate to say it, but I'm gonna say it again, X Factor goaltender. If Ottinger has a good playoff, he's young. He started off the playoffs good last year, but then had a definitely a shaky-ish series against the Kraken. They barely edged that one out, and then they got smoked by Vegas in the conference finals. So I think this one's gonna be tough. Everything, the season series, the playoffs last year, everything kind of makes me want to lean towards Vegas. But I just can't bet against the Stars. They've just been a solid team all year. No one's really noticed, but they've kind of just slowly, steadily won the division, and then eventually won the West. I have Dallas winning this one in 6. But that's one of the series I'm like, it might be one I regret. There's definitely a couple, the Tampa one I might regret. I'd Winnipeg in 7, Vancouver in 6, and Edmonton in 5. Pretty good diversity there. This is one I'm pretty scared about because I just don't know what Vegas we're gonna get. But instead of gambling on Vegas being just last year's Vegas team, why not just stick with the safe route? It's kind of how I thought about this one. Go with the Stars. They're the solid team. They got home ice. I like Dallas in these playoffs. And there's the round 1. Let's move on to round 2. Okay, round 2. So, seeing as how usually the way this goes is half my bracket's already chalked by round 2, I definitely put a little bit, not as much thought into these round 2 matchups in round 3 and round 4. But, I still tried my best. Pretty much, these matchups are just as hard, if not harder, than the round 1 matchups. And it's almost impossible to predict and not even worth putting that much thought in because, I'd say 8 or 6 of these 10 could easily all lose. The ones I'm most confident about are the Rangers and Canes. I honestly think those are locks. Maybe the Oilers too, so there's 3. But I think Canucks could lose, Jets could lose, Stars could lose, Tampa could definitely lose. I think Leafs can beat Boston for sure. So, but we're just going to roll through these. Let's start down here in this absolute banger of a Metropolitan Division matchup. Seed 1 versus Seed 2. It's the Rangers and the Hurricanes. And these two met up in the playoffs 2 years ago. Carolina had the home ice advantage in that one, and the Rangers were underdogs. But the Rangers took them to 7 and smoked them in Carolina in Game 7 to move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think this Hurricanes team is much better. I think their offense, they have a lot more scoring. I think Freddie Anderson is solid. He's definitely not as solid as Igor Shesterkin, but that defense for Carolina they might have the best blue line in the league. Just top to bottom, all 3 lines. Just hard to get by. And on the Rangers side, it just seems like they're inconsistent. Their playoff game is hard to predict. But I think if they smoke the Capitals, like I'm predicting them to, they're just going to be rolling. This series is tough. This is one of the head scratchers. I think it's going 7. Regardless, gonna have a lot of Game 7s in the second round, just because it's a lot of rivalry, division matchups, and just all good teams. But Rangers on home ice in Game 7. I think they're rolling. Igor Shesterkin, I think, is going to have the best playoff of his life. it's tough. It's really tough to bet against the Hurricanes. But I have the Rangers winning this one in 7. And if anyone picks the Hurricanes to win this matchup, or even go all the way and win the Cup, I would not blame you. I think the Hurricanes and the Rangers are the teams to beat in the East. I think the Panthers, honestly, if they make it out here, they would go here and have the best chance to beat either of these two teams. But regardless, I think whoever wins this matchup is getting out of the East and going to the Cup. I think the Metro is the powerhouse right now in the East. And pick Carolina, there we go. But I got the Rangers, home ice and goaltending. The season series, I think the Rangers won 2-1. And the most recent game, about a month ago, it was like in March, it was in Carolina, and it just was it felt like a playoff game, super physical, low scoring. You could tell both teams wanted to win that game. They were fighting for the division title. They were close in the standings, but the Rangers ended up edging that one out. I think they won 1-0 actually, or maybe 2-1. But I remember that game very vividly and thinking that was a playoff game, and you know, if these two teams match up, it's going to be a game like that, and the Rangers are the ones that found a way to come out on top in Carolina. Just in terms of the matchup of these two teams, that's why I like the Rangers to just barely come out on top against the Hurricanes here. But again, like I said, it's a coin flip. Hurricanes can run away with that if, you know, Rangers scoring continues to be inconsistent. But moving on, Bruins and Lightning, and God, this was another one even worse than the last series. This is one I went back and forth on. In fact, this is the only series in the entire bracket that I changed my pick. If you look at the season series between these two teams, go to round 2. Lightning versus Bruins. Bruins had it. Well, that's not right. Wait. Yeah. No. Lightning had this 3-1. Lightning went 3-1 against the Bruins this year. One of them was a shootout, though, I think, or it was an overtime, so Boston went 1-2-1. And here's my thought behind this series. If Tampa finds a way to beat Florida, it's going to be because Vasilevsky is prime Vasilevsky, and this team knows how to make playoff runs. They went to 3 straight cups. You just got to be high on Tampa. And I think I heard Sergachev might even come back if they make it out of round 1. Like, he might play in the second series or third. So I mean, I don't know how bad his injury was, or the surgery, the recovery, how many minutes he'd even get. But that's got to be a good sign for Tampa. And just got to trust that the playoff run that Tampa can go on the other side. Boston, when you look at this series between them and the Leafs, you heard my reasoning before. It's almost as if I was betting against the Leafs, not even like really going for the Bruins. I'm scared of the Bruins' depth. They don't have a lot of depth. They lost their, Bergeron and Krejci. They just don't have a lot of depth, and their goaltending, as good as it is, it's much better as it is in Toronto's. They don't have a lot of playoff experience, Ullmark and Swayman. They're not very playoff tested. Part of the reason they lost last year in the first round. Whereas, you're going up against Vasilevsky instead of Tampa, best playoff goalie could be in this bracket. I initially had Boston winning this series 4-2. Just kind of trusting that Boston would be the sleeper Bruins that they've been all year, just quietly better than everyone. But I switched my pick to Tampa 4-1. Just because of the reasoning I just explained. I mean, I think Vasilevsky's going to get hot. If they beat Florida, then Tampa's going to go. And Boston lacks depth. They can beat up on a rivalry team like the Leafs that they just completely own. But when it comes to the next round against a hot Tendy and just a hot team in the Tampa Bay Lightning, I have the Bruins losing this series to Tampa. And honestly, if Florida wins and plays Boston, I probably have Florida winning that one too. So I'm not too hurt. I feel like I won't be too hurt if Tampa just loses in the first round here. You got to think about that when you pick upsets. But yeah, I have a rematch of the 2022 Eastern Conference Finals between the Lightning and the Rangers. Moving on over here to the West, and I said about the last two series, I'm going to say it about this one. This kept me up at night, this series. This, out of the entire bracket, was probably the hardest one. This one was second. Say this one was third. Yeah. Canucks and Oilers. Battle of Canada. Canucks have home ice, and Canucks owned the Oilers this year. I think they've won 5 straight matchups against the Oilers. One of them was the 8-1 beatdown, first game of the season earlier this year, and the next two that the Canucks won were still in that just absolute Oilers slump phase. They played them 3 times really early in the year, and Canucks just smoked them. I think the third game that they smoked them, at that point, the Oilers were 2-8-1, like bottom of the league. Then they fired their coach, went on that absolute heater. Oilers figured it out. But even still, when they played the fourth time just a couple weeks ago, McDavid was out and Demko was out. So, I mean, there was no McDavid, but Canucks had DeSmith in. We all know how everyone feels about DeSmith. He's not that great. Demko's their guy. But Canucks still won. You know, they found a way to put up 3 and hold the Oilers to just 1. So the Canucks just head-to-head have that complete advantage. And when I was thinking about the series, Canucks at home, I actually had the Canucks going up in the series 3-1. I think they can either go up 2-0 at home or 1-1, but regardless, I think they can go into Edmonton and win a game or two and go up in the series 3-1. But I think that Edmonton has that fight in them. I think their coaching's good. They can dig down. I think they bring it back 3-3. I think this one's going to Game 7. And this is just, coin toss again. And what it boils down to is goaltending. Stuart Skinner, I trust him more this year than I did last year because he was a rookie, rookie in the playoffs. You just can't really put money on that. But if Demko comes out and plays good, and they have home ice, Canucks have been insane at home this year. I have the Canucks just barely coming out of the series, winning the Canada Cup in the playoffs against the Oilers, 4-3 in 7 games, banger of a series. I wouldn't be surprised if Edmonton honestly just came out and steamrolled them, like 4-1. But that's not what I'm going with. I'm going with the Canucks playoff run. All right, I'm doing it. I said earlier in the year that they're the real deal. Like when they went on that tear, they were number 1. I seriously said it. I believe it. I think they have a lot of depth. Oilers have a lot of depth too. I like the pickups that they made at the deadline, but I just can't trust their goaltending. And if you're a Canucks fan, you're cheering for the Oilers to beat the Kings because the Canucks suck against the Kings. But the Canucks are pretty damn good against the Oilers, so I have the Canucks moving on to the Western Conference Finals to play either the Stars or the Winnipeg Jets Central Division matchup. And this one was tough, but honestly, I want the Jets to win this series. I really do. And I want the Rangers to win this one too. The Rangers are fun to watch. And this might just be a little bit biased. This matchup might be the most biased pick I have in the whole bracket. I honestly really think Carolina can win this. I think they might, but I just really want the Rangers to. And I know when you have money on it, you're not supposed to be biased. But I wouldn't pick the Rangers if I didn't believe they actually can. And with this, I really want the Jets to win. That would guarantee a Canadian team in the Stanley Cup, which we haven't seen in a little bit since Montreal, I think, in 2020. But there were no fans at that one, right? So, I mean, who even cares? It'd be fun. But this is what makes me so nervous, is if Vegas beats Dallas in the first round, and that will chalk everything. Because I have Dallas beating the Jets here, and I have them beating the Jets in 7 as well. I think Hellebuck and the Jets, their depth, their home ice, the way they play at home, the whiteout, you gotta love it. It's so entertaining, fun to watch. I really wanted to pick the Jets in 7, just for pure entertainment value. But the Stars are just so solid. I'm finding it hard for myself to bet against them in these playoffs. I think they can make the run, and I'd love to see the Jets win, but I have the Stars advancing once again for the second year in a row to the Western Conference Finals, where they'll play the Canucks. But before we get to that, let's go over here to the Lightning and Rangers, the rematch of the 2022 Eastern Conference Finals. When you look at the season series, the Rangers beat Tampa Bay twice and lost once. So the Rangers are 2-1 against Tampa this year in the regular season. If you remember the playoffs a couple years ago, I think the Rangers went up 2-0 with home ice advantage in that series, and then they just ran out of gas, and Tampa floored them. They won 4 straight, advancing to the Cup final. But I think this year will be different. I think if anyone's running out of gas, it's going to be Tampa. I just think the Rangers, their offense and their depth offensively is just a lot better than the Lightning. The Lightning really kind of only have 2 lines. I know I said the same thing about the Bruins, but I just trust the Lightning's, power play and offense, scoring ability more than the Bruins, as well as the Lightning's goaltending. But I mean, if you call goaltending a wash here, if Vasilevsky's hot, I think Shesterkin will be just as hot coming off that Kane series. The blue line for the Rangers is more stacked. All 3 lines are just solid. You can trust all of them. Adam Fox, I think, had an absolute underrated year. I think he should be talked about in the Norris. I mean, Quinn Hughes will win it, but Adam Fox should be up there. Probably with Roman Josi and Cale Makar. But anyway, that's another discussion. The home ice advantage, I couldn't see myself picking Tampa in this series. I think the Rangers get through the revenge. I think they kind of smoke them too. I have the Rangers winning this series 4-1. I just see Tampa not being able to keep up with the Rangers. And look at that, we have Rangers in the Stanley Cup final. Who are they going to face? Well, Stars have, this is the top 2 seeds in the West. I know that's kind of lame, but I think this one's probably a little bit more unlikely. We could see the Oilers in there too, but I have the Canucks. Honestly, it could go either way. I could see the Vegas Golden Knights, could see the Avs. A bunch of people in my bracket have the Avs going all the way, but I have them out first round. It's going to be a super fun playoff. But regardless, let's stop talking about other shit and just get on with the goddamn Stars versus Canucks. The season series, Dallas won 2-1, but one of them was in overtime, so Canucks went 1-1 against Dallas. Pretty much as even as you can get between these 2 teams in terms of the regular season. Stars will have home ice. This one was just hard. I really didn't even try and ended up just kind of going with the safe pick and who I just think is more solid top to bottom, who I trust more. Demko, coming off injury and stuff, kind of unpredictable. Canucks haven't been in the playoffs in a while. And after watching the Stars go down 3-0 in the conference finals last year and winning 2 straight to bring it back, just falling just short, I knew it. I felt like it last year, and especially during the All-Star break this year. I felt like they had it in this year to make it to the Cup final. I told you, I predicted it would be them, Stars making out of the West, and the Panthers making out of the East. I'm staying true to one of those words. I'm picking the Stars to make it out of the West. I just think they're that solid. And I think this will be a fun Stanley Cup. Obviously not as fun if you have literally any Canadian team in the Stanley Cup final. If you have 2 Canadian teams, that's insane, but then you have to rely on the Leafs, and who's relying on the Leafs? So, sorry Leafs fans. But Rangers versus Dallas, this is just going to be a solid one. Great goaltending on both sides, great depth on both sides, great blue lines on both sides, electric power plays, Stars. I think the Rangers probably have more studs than the Stars, but the Stars have more depth. And once again, my Stanley Cup winner, I'm going with the safe pick. I have the Dallas Stars winning the Cup this year, and the reason why the Vegas Stars round 1 matchup was so tough for me is because I feel like the Stars can do it this year, and I have them winning it all. But if Vegas, the LTIR merchants, cheat again and come out and shock everyone, then my bracket is just completely chalked. The Rangers are good, but their scoring can be inconsistent. I don't think the Star scoring is inconsistent at all. If anything, they're consistent. That's why I keep calling them the safe pick. Ottinger is good. He's very good. So is Shesterkin, but I mean, there's not really a lot of explaining to do. I think the season series was 1-1, 1-1. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't even think I looked it up because I just went with the Stars. Predict the total number of goals scored in the Stanley Cup Final Series. Well, I have Stars in 6, so if there's 5, 6 goals, I think it'd be. Let's do 5.5. 6 times 5.5 is 33. Boom. 33 goals. Missed required params. I don't know what that means. But anyway, I mean, here's my bracket. There it is. Your Stars, the Dallas Stars, are your 2024 Stanley Cup champions. I'd love it to be the Rangers. I'm going to cheer for the Rangers. Now that this is over with, my two teams are going to be the Rangers and the Jets. Obviously, my Seattle Kraken didn't make the playoffs, but I do have some other teams I enjoy watching out there. The Red Wings are one of them. I really wish they made the playoffs. Stupid Capitals, stupid Flyers. I hate the Flyers for pulling the goalie, but yeah, it's gonna do it for the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you didn't get too mad at my picks if your team got out in the first round like a bunch of losers. But yeah, hope you enjoyed. Let me know who y'all got winning the cup. And yeah, we'll talk to you. Peace.